Have you ever wondered why your silent transformation feels like a crime to the world around you? Why the moment you start thinking differently, the air around you changes. Friends no longer laugh the same way. Their jokes feel heavier. Their advice suddenly sounds less like support and more like subtle warnings. The truth is, people rarely say it out loud, but when you evolve, you trigger something inside them that terrifies them. Because your growth doesn't just change you, it exposes them. Imagine this. You begin to question old beliefs, reject easy answers, and carve your own path. Suddenly, the room grows colder. Eyes turn suspicious. Whispers rise in your absence. It's not because you've done something wrong. It's because you've done something rare. You've dared to break the invisible contract of mediocrity that holds most people together. And when you do, you become a mirror they can't stand to look at. A mirror that reflects not your strength alone, but their weakness, their complacency, their fear. This is not a coincidence. This is nature's law. Evolution has never been a gentle process. It is violent, disruptive, merciless. And when your mind begins to evolve, it shakes the comfortable illusions of everyone who still lives in sleep. They feel your difference like an earthquake, and their instinct is not to celebrate you, but to stop you. Because if you can change, then they too are forced to see that they could. But they don't. And nothing terrifies the human spirit more than the sight of wasted potential. So ask yourself, why does your silence suddenly feel threatening to them? Why does your refusal to bend make them restless? It is because a truly strong mind is dangerous. Dangerous to the system. Dangerous to the collective comfort of the herd. And most of all, dangerous to your former self. This video is not for the comfortable. It is not for those who want to be entertained with illusions. This is for you, the one who feels the rupture within, who senses that change is no longer optional but inevitable. If you stay, you will be confronted. You will be challenged. But you may also be set free. And once you hear this, you will never see yourself or the world the same way again. Discomfort of others with your growth. The moment you begin to grow, truly grow, the world around you changes in ways you never expected. At first it seems subtle, a joke from a friend that feels slightly off, a family member who suddenly grows quiet when you share an idea, a colleague whose smile doesn't quite reach their eyes anymore. But underneath these small details lies a profound truth. Your personal evolution disturbs the fragile balance of the people around you. It's not that they hate you. It's not even that they consciously want to stop you. It's that your growth exposes something in them that they would rather keep hidden. Their own stagnation. Human beings are creatures of habit. They thrive on predictability. When you act as you always have, you play your role perfectly within their script. But when you start to change, when your words, actions, and even your silence stop aligning with who you used to be, the script breaks. Suddenly, they are forced to confront questions they do not want to ask. Why am I not changing? Why do I still feel stuck? What am I avoiding? And rather than facing these questions, they turn their discomfort toward you. They laugh at you, they dismiss you, or they give you unsolicited advice disguised as concern. It is easier to pull you back into the cage than to admit that freedom exists outside of it. This is why growth often feels like betrayal. You are not betraying them. You are betraying the unspoken contract of mediocrity that everyone silently agrees to follow. Don't go too far. Don't question too much. Don't rise too high. Break that contract and you become a living reminder of what they refuse to be. And that reminder is unbearable. But here lies the paradox. The very loneliness you feel when others distance themselves is proof that your transformation is real. Weak growth is celebrated. Cosmetic change is applauded. But deep, authentic growth, that terrifies people. And if your presence makes others restless, it means you are no longer walking in circles. You are moving forward. So remember this. Their discomfort is not your failure. It is your confirmation. You are no longer the same, and they know it, even if they never admit it. Strength from chaos and suffering. Strength is never born in comfort. It is born in the furnace of chaos. In the long nights when you think you cannot endure one more hour. In the moments when everything you believed in collapses around you. This truth is uncomfortable, but it is also liberating. Because once you accept that suffering is not a mistake of life, but the very mechanism through which transformation happens, you stop asking for life to be easier and begin asking to be stronger. Think of your own past. Were the moments that shaped you the most the easy ones? Or were they the nights of despair? The heartbreaks, the failures that forced you to rebuild yourself from the ground up? Chaos, as Nietzsche believed, is not the enemy. It is the soil in which greatness is planted. Without chaos, without the tension of falling apart and putting yourself back together, there can be no dancing star, no unshakable spirit. Comfort breeds complacency. Pain breeds power. The modern world sells the illusion that strength comes from positivity, from repeating affirmations, from avoiding what hurts. But this is a lie. A shield made of paper. Real strength is carved into your very being when you face suffering directly, when you look at the storm and walk into it instead of hiding. In that chaos, you are stripped of illusions. You are forced to meet yourself without masks, without excuses. And though it feels like destruction, it is actually reconstruction. You are not being broken. You are being remade. Yet chaos is dangerous. Not everyone survives it. Some collapse under its weight. That is why Nietzsche warned that strength is not guaranteed. It must be earned. Pain can either destroy you or shape you. The difference lies in your response. If you choose to see suffering as meaningless, it crushes you. But if you use it as fuel, as a sculptor uses a hammer on stone, then every wound becomes part of your architecture. Every scar becomes proof that you did not just survive, you transformed. So do not run from chaos. Do not beg for a painless existence. To live without struggle is to live half asleep. Instead, embrace the fall, because only those who have endured the abyss can rise with the kind of power that makes the world tremble. Death of God and radical freedom. When Nietzsche declared God is dead, he was not speaking about the literal death of a deity. He was speaking about the collapse of certainty, the crumbling of the moral frameworks and absolute truths that once gave humanity a clear sense of direction. For centuries, people relied on religion, tradition, and authority to tell them what is right and wrong, what is meaningful and meaningless, what to fear and what to follow. But as science, philosophy, and reason tore down those old structures, a terrifying emptiness was revealed. If there is no divine order, no ultimate authority, then who decides what is true? Who decides what is good? This is the radical freedom Nietzsche speaks of. It is exhilarating, but it is also dangerous, because with the death of God, the responsibility shifts entirely onto the individual. No one else can tell you the meaning of your life. No one else can hand you a ready-made set of values. You must create them yourself. And most people are terrified of this freedom. They would rather cling to comforting illusions, follow the herd, and surrender their individuality than face the abyss of making their own choices. This is where the true strength of the individual is tested. To live authentically in a world without pre-written meaning is to become your own lawgiver, your own creator of values. It means rejecting the herd mentality, the lazy acceptance of inherited beliefs, and instead asking yourself, what do I truly value? What is worth living for? What is worth dying for? These questions are not given to you by any book or authority. You must wrestle with them alone. But this freedom is not chaos. It is creation. In the space where the old gods have fallen, you have the chance to write your own story, to shape your own morality, to rise above blind obedience and become something higher. Nietzsche believed that only by embracing this radical freedom could humanity move toward its true potential, the creation of the Übermensch, the higher being who does not need external validation because he has forged his own path. The death of God is not the end. It is the beginning. The collapse of old certainty is the birth of possibility, and only those brave enough to stand in this freedom, to bear its weight without fleeing into illusions, can truly live with power and authenticity. The will to power. At the core of Nietzsche's philosophy lies one of his most misunderstood yet powerful ideas: the will to power. Many have reduced it to a desire for domination, for control over others, for political or military conquest. But Nietzsche's vision goes far deeper than this surface interpretation. The will to power is not about crushing others. It is about expanding yourself, about the inner force that drives all life to grow, to overcome, to transform, to reach beyond its current limitations. It is the heartbeat of existence itself. Think of a small seed buried in the darkness of the soil. Why does it push upward, breaking through the weight of earth above it, striving toward the sun? That struggle is its will to power. Think of the human being who, despite repeated failures, stands up again and again, refusing to surrender to despair. That persistence is the will to power. It is the force that whispers in your ear when everything around you tells you to quit. Rise, grow, become. Nietzsche understood that life itself is not about survival alone. If mere survival were enough, humanity would remain stagnant, never reaching for greatness. The will to power pushes us beyond survival toward creation, toward achievement, toward mastery. It is why artists paint not just to fill a canvas but to leave behind something eternal. It is why thinkers challenge old dogmas, risking exile or death, just to bring forth a new vision. It is why individuals, even in the darkest times, still choose to build, to dream, to hope. Yet Nietzsche also warns that not everyone responds to the will to power in the same way. The weak, those dominated by fear and resentment, twisted into envy, bitterness, or the desire to drag others down. They use their will not to create but to destroy. Their power becomes parasitic. But the strong, the ones who embrace suffering, who accept the burden of freedom, use their will to power to rise above. They do not seek validation from the herd. They impose form upon chaos, order upon disorder, meaning upon the meaningless. They do not wait for permission to live fully. They demand it from existence itself. The will to power is not about external conquest. It is about internal sovereignty. To rule oneself is the highest form of power. To master your impulses, your fears, your doubts, and turn them into energy for growth. That is the true expression of Nietzsche's vision. It is not the throne, the crown, or the battlefield that proves power. It is the ability to stand alone, unshaken, and say, I choose who I become. In the end, Nietzsche's will to power is both a challenge and a promise. A challenge because it demands that you stop blaming fate, society, or destiny for your condition, and instead take responsibility for your own becoming. And a promise because once you accept it, no obstacle, no chaos, no suffering can truly defeat you. For the will to power is life itself, and to align with it is to align with the very essence of existence, the eternal return. Among Nietzsche's most haunting and transformative ideas is the thought experiment known as the eternal return. Imagine, he says, that a demon whispers in your ear, this life, exactly as you have lived it, with every joy and every sorrow, every victory and every mistake, will repeat itself again and again for eternity. You will live it countless times in exactly the same way. At first, this thought can feel suffocating, even terrifying. To think that every regret, every wound, every humiliation would return eternally is unbearable. But Nietzsche does not offer this vision as punishment. He offers it as a test, a mirror for your soul. The question is simple. If your life were to repeat endlessly, would you curse the demon or would you bless him? Would you collapse under the weight of repetition? Or would you rise and declare that every moment, even the painful ones, was worth living again? In this way, the eternal return forces us to confront the authenticity of our existence. If we are living passively, drifting through days with no meaning, then the thought of repeating such a life becomes a nightmare. But if we live with intensity, with purpose, with creation, then the eternal return transforms into the ultimate affirmation. Yes, I would live this life again exactly as it is, 1,000 times over. Nietzsche's eternal return is not meant to be taken as a literal cosmological truth. It is a psychological weapon, a philosophical test. It strips away illusions about tomorrow, about some future salvation, about waiting for the right moment. Because if life is to return eternally, then every choice matters infinitely. Every decision, no matter how small, becomes eternal. You cannot delay your becoming because every hesitation will echo forever. This is a call to live each moment as though it carries the weight of eternity. The terrifying beauty of the eternal return lies in its demand for total responsibility. There are no second chances, no escape routes, no external redeemers. You cannot outsource meaning. You must create it in every action. The lazy, the resentful, the fearful, those who live half-lives will see in this idea only despair. But those who embrace life fully will see in it the highest form of courage. To love your fate, amor fati, so deeply that you would choose it again and again. This is Nietzsche's vision of true strength. The eternal return is the ultimate test of life affirmation. It asks, do you live in such a way that you could will its repetition forever? If the answer is no, then you are wasting your existence. If the answer is yes, then you have aligned yourself with the deepest power of being itself. In this way, Nietzsche's eternal return is not a curse but a challenge to live so fully, so authentically that even eternity could not exhaust the beauty of your existence. The Übermensch. Perhaps the most famous and controversial concept in Nietzsche's philosophy is the Übermensch, often translated as the Superman or Overman. But this idea is frequently misunderstood. The Übermensch is not a comic book hero, not a tyrant, not a political dictator. Instead, Nietzsche presents the Übermensch as the next stage of human evolution, a being who transcends the herd mentality, who creates his own values and who lives life as a work of art. If the death of God leaves humanity with a terrifying freedom, then the Übermensch is the one who rises to meet that challenge. The ordinary person, Nietzsche says, often seeks comfort in the herd. They follow traditions, moral codes, and social expectations not because they believe in them deeply, but because it is easier to conform than to create. They avoid risk, avoid responsibility, and live within boundaries drawn by others. But the Übermensch is different. He does not ask, "What should I do?" but instead declares, "This is what I will do." He does not borrow values, he invents them. His morality does not come from fear or obedience, but from strength, creativity, and self-mastery. What makes the Übermensch powerful is not domination over others, but mastery over himself. He has confronted chaos, endured suffering, embraced the eternal return, and emerged with a radical love of life. Amor fati. He does not wish life were easier. He affirms it as it is with all its beauty and brutality. To him, every wound becomes part of his art, every struggle a brushstroke in the masterpiece of his existence. Where ordinary people see obstacles, he sees opportunities to shape himself into something higher. The Übermensch is also a creator of meaning in a world without ultimate truths. With the death of God, humanity faces nihilism, the terrifying possibility that life has no inherent purpose. Most people collapse under this weight, seeking distractions, addictions, or ideologies to numb the emptiness. But the Übermensch transforms this void into possibility. He does not ask the universe for meaning, he imposes it. He says yes to life not because it is safe or certain, but because it is raw, dangerous, and alive. This vision is not meant to glorify arrogance or cruelty. The Übermensch is not above morality in the sense of becoming immoral. He is beyond morality in the sense of creating a higher ethic rooted in life itself. He embodies courage instead of fear, creativity instead of conformity, power instead of resentment. He is not chained by guilt or shame. He is liberated by responsibility. In many ways, Nietzsche's Übermensch is less a person than a challenge, a horizon toward which humanity must strive. He is a vision of what we could become if we stopped hiding from freedom, stopped clinging to illusions, and dared to live authentically. To aspire toward the Übermensch is to refuse to be small, to refuse to be a slave to the herd, and to commit to the great task of becoming fully alive. The danger of nihilism. When Nietzsche declared the death of God, he did not celebrate it with naive joy. He knew that removing the foundation of traditional morality, religion, and absolute truths would not instantly liberate humanity. It would also plunge it into a dangerous abyss. Nihilism. Nihilism is the condition in which life seems meaningless, values collapse, and existence feels empty. If there is no divine order, no cosmic purpose, no ultimate truth, then why live at all? Why struggle? Why sacrifice? Why create, when nothing has any lasting value? This is the haunting shadow that Nietzsche feared. Nihilism is not simply an intellectual idea. It is a sickness of the spirit. It shows itself in despair, in apathy, in the quiet voice that whispers, "Nothing matters, so why try?" It appears in cultures that replace genuine values with shallow distractions, endless consumption, empty entertainment, blind conformity. Nietzsche saw this coming. The risk that humanity, robbed of external meaning, would become passive, weak, and resentful, clinging to comfort instead of creation. The danger of nihilism is not only hopelessness, but also the perversion of the will to power. Those who cannot create meaning for themselves may seek to destroy the meaning of others. Out of envy, they tear down greatness. Out of resentment, they glorify weakness. Out of fear, they impose rigid systems that suffocate the individual spirit. For Nietzsche, this was the greatest threat. Not that people would despair in silence, but that they would embrace a false morality of mediocrity, dragging everyone down to the lowest level. Yet Nietzsche does not stop at diagnosis. He offers a path beyond nihilism. The collapse of old values, though terrifying, is also an opportunity. If life has no pre-given meaning, then the courageous individual is free to create meaning. The nihilist sees emptiness as a void. The creator sees it as a blank canvas. To transcend nihilism is to stop asking, "What is the meaning of life?" and instead declare, "What meaning will I give to my life?" This is why Nietzsche's philosophy is both dangerous and liberating. Dangerous because it strips away the illusions that comfort the weak. Liberating because it challenges us to rise above despair, to forge new values rooted in strength, authenticity, and creation. Nihilism is the abyss, but Nietzsche reminds us that it is only by facing the abyss without flinching that we discover the power to climb higher. The danger of nihilism, then, is not that life is meaningless, but that we might surrender to that meaninglessness instead of transforming it. To give in is to die before death. To resist, to create, to affirm life even when it seems empty. That is the path of strength. Nietzsche's warning still echoes today. Avoid the seduction of nihilism or risk becoming a ghost in your own existence. Revaluation of values. Nietzsche believed that if humanity was to escape the trap of nihilism, it had to undergo a radical transformation, a revaluation of values. For centuries, morality had been dictated by religion, tradition, and herd mentality. These values, Nietzsche argued, were not universal truths but inventions, tools of the weak to control the strong, of the fearful to restrain the courageous. They glorified humility, obedience, and self-denial while condemning strength, ambition, and individuality. Nietzsche called this slave morality, a morality born not of genuine virtue but of resentment. Revaluation of values means turning this morality upside down. It means asking, who benefits from the values we live by? Do they strengthen us or do they weaken us? Do they inspire greatness or do they encourage mediocrity? Nietzsche saw that many of the moral rules society praises as good are in fact chains designed to keep people small, dependent, and fearful. For example, the glorification of suffering for its own sake, the worship of obedience over freedom, the celebration of weakness as moral superiority. All of these, he believed, were lies that robbed humanity of its vitality. Instead, Nietzsche calls for new values rooted in life, strength, and creativity. Instead of glorifying denial, we must glorify affirmation. Instead of teaching people to suppress their instincts, we must teach them to master and channel them. Instead of condemning individuality, we must celebrate it as the highest expression of human potential. This does not mean abandoning compassion or community, but it does mean rejecting values that punish excellence, that elevate conformity over courage. The revaluation of values is not a comfortable process. It demands courage, because it requires dismantling the illusions that have given people security for centuries. It demands responsibility, because in the absence of divine commandments or absolute truths, the individual must become the creator of meaning. And it demands strength because new values cannot be borrowed from tradition. They must be forged through struggle, creativity, and self-overcoming. In Nietzsche's vision, the revaluation of values is not simply a philosophical exercise. It is the birth of a new humanity. Only through this process can individuals escape the mediocrity of herd morality and move toward the ideal of the Übermensch. It is not about discarding morality altogether, but about creating one that celebrates life instead of condemning it, one that pushes humanity forward instead of holding it back. The challenge of the revaluation of values is clear. Will we cling to old chains out of fear, or will we break them to step into freedom? The herd clings to what is safe even if it weakens them. The strong dare to create even if it isolates them. Nietzsche's call is simple but radical. Stop living by borrowed truths and begin living by values that affirm your existence, that demand your growth, that honor the power of life itself. Individual versus herd. One of Nietzsche's most powerful and controversial insights is his distinction between the individual and the herd. He saw that most human beings, despite their illusions of freedom, live as members of the herd. They think, act, and believe not because they have chosen to, but because it is what everyone around them is doing. The herd provides comfort, a sense of belonging, and a ready-made set of values. But beneath this comfort lies a dangerous truth. The herd demands conformity and it punishes difference. To Nietzsche, the herd was the enemy of greatness, because it suppresses everything unique, courageous, and life-affirming in the individual. The individual, by contrast, is someone who dares to stand apart from the collective. This is not about arrogance or isolation for its own sake. It is about the willingness to think for oneself, to question traditions, and to refuse to be ruled by the fear of rejection. The individual is not content to live by inherited truths. They create their own. But this path is not easy. To stand apart from the herd is to risk being misunderstood, mocked, or even condemned. History is filled with examples of individuals who were ridiculed in their time, only to be celebrated later. Visionaries, artists, philosophers, and leaders who broke away from the comfort of conformity to chart a new path for humanity. Nietzsche believed that the herd resents the individual precisely because the individual exposes what they lack. The herd finds safety in sameness. The individual proves that other possibilities exist. This confrontation creates tension. The herd calls the individual arrogant, dangerous, even immoral, not because they are wrong, but because they refuse to bend. Nietzsche called this reaction ressentiment, the bitterness of the weak toward those who reveal their weakness by simply being strong. But the individual must be prepared for this. Choosing to rise above the herd means choosing solitude, risk, and responsibility. The herd shares the burden of thought. The individual carries it alone. The herd hides behind dogma. The individual must forge values from within. The herd seeks comfort. The individual embraces discomfort as the price of freedom. And yet, it is precisely this path that allows the individual to live fully, creatively, and authentically. Nietzsche does not suggest that everyone can or should break free from the herd. In fact, he believed that most people cannot bear the weight of individuality. They prefer the safety of obedience over the terror of freedom. But for those who can endure it, the rewards are immense. The individual becomes a creator, not a follower. They live by their own rhythm, not the expectations of others. Their very existence becomes a challenge to mediocrity and a call for humanity to rise higher. In the end, the battle between individual and herd is not just external, it is also internal. Each of us carries the voice of the herd within, urging us to conform, to stay small, to avoid risk. And each of us carries the spark of individuality, urging us to rise, to question, to create. The question Nietzsche leaves us with is simple yet profound. Which voice will we obey? The herd that offers comfort but demands our mediocrity? Or the inner call that promises greatness but demands our courage? Living authentically, the price and power of being unbreakable. To Nietzsche, the highest form of existence is not one lived in obedience, comfort, or conformity, but one lived authentically. Authenticity means living in alignment with your own values, your own vision, and your own inner truth, even when the world resists it, even when it costs you everything familiar. To live authentically is to stop borrowing your identity from religion, culture, or society, and instead to create it anew from within. This is not a comfortable path nor a safe one, but it is the only path that leads to real freedom and real strength. The price of authenticity is heavy. You will be misunderstood, sometimes even hated. People will accuse you of arrogance, selfishness, or coldness, not because you are wrong, but because you refuse to bend to the script they have written for you. Friendships built on convenience may dissolve. Opportunities that require submission will vanish. The herd will see you not as one of them, but as a threat to their fragile sense of order. Nietzsche understood this pain deeply because he lived it himself. Isolated, often rejected, dismissed as insane by many of his contemporaries. Yet he also understood that this loneliness was the crucible in which true strength is forged. But the reward of authenticity is far greater than the loss it demands. When you stop living for applause, you begin to live for truth. When you stop needing approval, you gain integrity. When you stop hiding your thoughts and desires, you begin to embody presence. This transformation makes you unbreakable. Not because life stops testing you, but because no external force can define you anymore. The world cannot control a mind that is not desperate for validation. It cannot manipulate someone who has already chosen themselves. Nietzsche's call to live authentically is not about reckless rebellion or empty defiance. It is about aligning your existence with your highest vision, even when it terrifies you. It is about having the courage to say, "This is who I am and this is how I will live regardless of the cost." Such a life is rare, but it radiates power. It frightens those who hide behind masks because it shows them what they could be if only they dared. It inspires those who are ready to rise but have not yet taken the first step. And it strengthens the one who chooses it, because every act of authenticity is an act of liberation. Ultimately, living authentically is not just about personal fulfillment. It is about reshaping the world. Each authentic life is a crack in the wall of mediocrity. Each unbreakable mind is a reminder that humanity's future does not belong to the herd. but to those who dare to walk their own path. Nietzsche's challenge is clear. Do you want to be remembered as someone who lived by the rules of others or as someone who created their own? The choice is terrifying, but it is also liberating. And once you make it, you can never go back. The final call. So now, after walking through Nietzsche's vision, the question is no longer about him. It is about you. Will you choose the comfort of the herd or the dangerous freedom of becoming yourself? Will you remain a shadow of what the world expects? Or will you carve out an identity that no power, no ridicule, and no failure can erase? The truth is harsh but undeniable. Mediocrity costs nothing, but it steals everything. It robs you of your dignity, your potential, and your power to shape the world. Authenticity, on the other hand, costs everything, but it gives you back something far greater: yourself. Nietzsche's life was not easy. His ideas were not safe. But his words endure because they speak to the deepest hunger of the human soul. The hunger to live authentically, without fear. And that is the hidden power of the empath, the philosopher, the free spirit, the awakened human being. To feel deeply and still choose strength. To see clearly and still move forward. To stand alone and yet carry the force of an entire future within your being. This is not just philosophy. This is a challenge. The next time life confronts you with conformity, with pressure, with fear, remember Nietzsche's call. Ask yourself, am I living as myself or as a shadow of what others demand? The answer to that question will decide not just your destiny, but the destiny of humanity itself. Because in the end, humanity's future will not be written by the crowd. It will be written by the few who dare to live authentically, unbreakable, fearless, and free. The choice is yours.